I had a request to show how to trade at a specified time. Now it seems really simple, but then sometimes the simple things trip people up. So this will be a very quick video on just how to do that. And as I understand the request, you would enter a given time, and then at that time you would execute a trade. Now maybe there are more rules around the trade, but I'm not going to incorporate any of those rules. I'm just going to show how you can do something at a specified time each day. I have a starter expert advisor here. It doesn't actually do any trading. I've got on init that does nothing, on d init does nothing, on tick, and I've got this one function do action, which is simulating everything you might want to do to place a trade maybe, or whatever you might want to do in this expert advisor. And that's just my function for do action, which simply prints a message. So what I want to do is add to this something that will allow this do action to only be performed at specified times. The request was how to do something at a given time. I'm going to expand it a little bit because you might have multiple times. Maybe you want to do something just after the opening of the London session and just after New York Open. So you might have two inputs. So first, I'm going to have the inputs where I capture the times that you want this scheduled event to happen. Okay, so my two times are just some randomly chosen default time here. I'm calling them time 0 and time 1 because I'm going to be putting things in an array, and so I'm just having these numbers line up with the array positions. And I'm entering these as strings, so it's up to you to get these entries correct in terms of a time format. And then I've created an array, and this is of type MQL date time. I've called it schedule times, and it's a dynamic array because I haven't put a size in here. I know it will only be 2 because that's all I have here, but I'm just making it dynamic for the purpose of this tutorial. And I'll mention right now, I'm writing this in MQL5, but the code that I'm using is identical for MQL4, except that in MQL4 I would probably add property strict here. I can put it into the MQL5. So this code will run in MT4 or MT5 and do exactly the same thing. Now that schedule times, when I fill that in, will just have a time of day. It won't actually have a date. What I want to do is set up another array that has when I'm going to hit that trigger time. So if this time is 2:33:15, I want next time to include a date when it will be the next 2:33:15. And this array is an array of date times, and you'll see why I've chosen to make one of them an MQL date time structure and the other one a date time as we go through. So step 1 in the on init is simply to resize these two arrays to be the right size, and then to put these values and convert them from strings into MQL date time structures to put those into the schedule times array. So I have two statements here. String to time returns a Boolean. It will attempt to convert this string from the input into a date time. We'll store it into schedule times 0. And if that doesn't work, then it will return false. So if I get a false to that, then I'm just going to return init failed. This is only a demonstration. You can do whatever you like at that point, but I'm just going to fail. Now I have to actually repeat the statement. It would be great if I could put this inside a loop, but because these inputs are discrete variables and not part of an array, I can't actually index them. So I've got two different statements here, putting them into the individual elements of schedule times. But now I'm going to set up the next schedule times, and I will do that in a loop. Okay, so what I have in here, next schedule times, this is in a loop, element I, get next schedule time, schedule times I. So this get next schedule time is the real key to all of this, and that's the function that I'll get to, but I'm just working through the code from top to bottom. So just remember, this will set the next time. And then I have a print statement here where I show the schedule time for each of these elements. I was going to add another print statement where I showed the next schedule times, but I'm actually going to move that. I decided I'll put the print statement into this get next schedule time function when I write it. So everything is set up. So assuming this get next schedule time does what I want it to do, then I have an array of next schedule times, and that array has a date and time. So it will be the next time of day after now. So in onTick, okay, so that should do it in onTick. Again, I'm looping through the times that I have. You may have more than this, I've only got 2. And it simply says if the next schedule times is greater than 0, so if I set them to 0, then it's going to be ignored. And time current, because I'm using server time here. Now you might want to adjust this for GMT or something else. That's a minor adjustment, but I'm going to be using the server time. So if the current server time is greater than or equal to the next schedule time, then I'm going to do this do action, and then I'll reset the next schedule time to the get next schedule time. Again, this is the function that I have yet to write. Or if I simply want to stop after the first action, I can just set that to 0. So now I'll actually write this function because this is where the important things happen. So here is my function, and it accepts this MQL date time, which has to be passed by reference. I'm just calling it schedule, and it returns a date time. So it takes in a structure and returns a date time. Go back up here to the beginning. My array of schedule times, which is based on these 2 inputs, is an array of MQL date time structures, but my next schedule times are just simple date times. And that allows me to do a very simple test here where I'm simply saying if time current is greater than or equal to the next time, because time current is a date time. It's much easier to compare date times than it is to compare the structures. But the structure itself is more flexible in terms of matching up to a particular date and adding the date into this, what is effectively just a time string. And I realize, sorry, but I have made a mistake here. This isn't just string to time. It has to have time to struct around that. That is better. So I missed this out completely when I was typing this. So to go back to describing this, string to time of the inputs will convert these into a time. Time to struct will take that date time and convert that into a time structure, which is stored in this variable. Okay, that's better. Sorry, I'd completely forgotten that. Just in case I've forgotten something else, let me do a quick compile. Not all paths return of, okay, that's because I haven't written this yet. So my purpose here is to take this, which is an MQL date time, but I'm only looking at the actual time in that. I'm not looking at the date components. And I want to find the next time matching this time after now, which in my case is going to be based on server time. So if you want to adjust this for some other time, you can, but I'm using the server time. So I'm getting the time current into the variable now. I like to get this into a variable just so I don't have to keep calling this function. I'll use it more than once during this function here. And then I'm also declaring an MQL date time, which is next struct, and that's going to eventually hold that next time of day, which matches this time. And then I'm just converting now into next struct. So at the end of this statement, the next struct will have today's date and time, or it will have the current date and time. What I need to do next is replace the time component of that structure with the time component from this schedule. So I do that simply by replacing the hour, minute and second of the next struct with the hour, minute and second of the schedule. These times may be before or after now on the date that I'm running this. So if they are after, then that's fine, I'm already done. But if they are before, I need to move forward to the next day. So first I convert that structure, next struct, using struct to time. I convert that back to a date time, which is next time. And then if these hours, minutes and seconds from the schedule are earlier than now, then next time will be less than now, or I'm actually saying less than or equal to now. And in that case, I simply want to move forward by a day. And 1 day is 86,400 seconds. So next time plus equals 1 day. And I've put that inside a while loop. It should only happen once, but I'm just being a bit careful here. And as soon as next time is greater than now, it will exit this while loop, and then I just return next time. So at this point, that holds a time of day, which is after now, and matches the time component of schedule. And that's the function all done, except for a couple of small problems. And if you're happy with this, everything is fine. But I'll just point out the issues here. Number one, on tick. This can happen when the market is closed. Particularly, you'll see this at the end of day where markets close for a few minutes for bookkeeping purposes, but transactions still happen in the market and ticks still fire. And so this will happen even though you can't do anything in the market. So if this do action is actually performing some trading, it will fail. Now, I have two answers to that. One answer is to put something into this on tick which detects if the market's open, and I have in other videos things that show you how to detect if the market's open. And if the market's not open, you might as well just leave at this point because there's nothing you can do. But a simpler approach, given that you're inputting these scheduled dates and times, don't put them at times when the market's closed. Okay, so that's the first and the easiest problem. But a far more difficult problem is that this will set up a next scheduled time, and I'll explain this by example. I've got my time here as 2:33:15. So on Friday, this fires at 2:33:15, exactly as specified. Time current greater than or equal to 2:33:15. It's on a Friday, and then I call get next scheduled time, and that will return 2:33:15 on Saturday morning. Obviously, the markets are closed on Saturday morning, and you won't even get ticks. Some instruments are open all weekend, but most are not. So that time on Saturday morning, you won't even get a tick. So in part, we'll fix that when we move to on timer, but it still means this is firing when the market's closed. If you left this as is and you're running on tick, then next scheduled times will be set to 2:33:15 Saturday morning. Nothing will happen until the market opens on Monday morning. But on Monday, it won't wait for 2:33:15 on Monday. This will be after 2:33:15 Saturday, and it will fire immediately. The obvious answer to that is that we don't simply set next scheduled time to 2:33:15 on a Saturday, but this obviously depends on the instruments you have. I'm not going to go through a lot of code to detect the type of instrument and which trading days it has. I'm simply going to modify this get next scheduled time, and all I have to do is change this while next time is less than or equal to now, and I'll also exclude Saturday and Sunday. So Sunday is day number 0 and Saturday is day number 6. And now what this will do is not only while next time is less than or equal to now, it will also increment by 1 day if the next day of the week is a 0, Sunday, or a Saturday. There are still some situations. There are occasional non-trading days due to holidays. You'll just have to deal with those in some way by adding in extra conditions here, but this will take care of almost everything. And now to show you how to run this with on timer. On timer will partly alleviate the problem of weekends because it will fire even on Saturdays and Sundays as long as your expert advisor is running. And if you then detect that the market's closed, you can simply skip on and not do any actions. So firstly, if I want this to run on timer, I need to initialize the timer. That statement, event set timer, simply tells the program that I want a timer to run and I want it to run every 1 second. If you're worried about performance, you can make this slightly longer, but running 1 second will mean that I hit that time exactly when it comes up. If you are using a timer, then you probably don't need this code at all, but I'll leave it there. And to use a timer, you need this void on timer function. In case you missed how I did that, simply begin typing, and then you get on timer. I hit enter, it auto fills the rest of that, and I can see there's a little arrow at the end there, and then I just press tab and it creates that shell of the function for me. And then I do some formatting because I don't like the way it looks. Now in on timer, I'm going to make this a little bit different. So I'll leave the on tick code so that you can hopefully see both on the screen at the same time. So I'll just complete this in a moment, but I've initialized a counter there, the usual loop going through 2 iterations. I've separated out the if next scheduled times here. I've said if it's greater than 0, because if it is 0, I don't want to perform any actions here. If it's greater than 0, then I'll increment the count. And then this is the same statement as before. If the current time is after the scheduled time, or after then or equal to, I do the action and then update the next scheduled time. Now, the key differences here are this int count equals 0. I did say set the time to 0 if you want this to stop. If you do want it to stop, then I want to stop the timer if there are no scheduled times left. So that's why I have this count. It means if I get to the end of the loop here and the count is still 0, then all of the next scheduled times have been 0, and I'll just stop the timer because there's no point in wasting resource running that any further. So if count is equal to 0, it means there were no scheduled times, and I'll just kill the timer and this won't run any further. And that's the key difference between using the on timer and the on tick, because the timer would continue to run every second. Just make sure I don't have any typing errors. And the one thing I said I would add a print statement to this get next scheduled time, so I'm going to put here Okay, so that should do it. I will jump into the strategy tester so that I can run this expert, and I'll just run it for a few days, but you'll see that it should then print out a message at the beginning to say these are the next scheduled times, and then each time I get a new next scheduled time, it will print this message. Now I have this ready to run, scheduled trading. I'm running just from the 10th of September to the 17th of September. On a 1 hour chart, although that shouldn't matter. The inputs, just the 2 times, 233.15 and 415.15. Let's run that. Now that's reached the end of the process. Let's go back to the beginning of the messages. My 2 input times, 233.15, 415. Next scheduled time after 10th of September midnight is 10th of September 2:33. I probably should have included the seconds here, but there we go. And next scheduled time for 0 is 2:33. Next scheduled time after 10th of September is 10th of September 4:15. There we go. Here's the some action happens here. Next scheduled time after 2:33 on the 10th of September is 2:33 on the 11th of September. Then we get the same thing here at 4:15:17. Next time is 11th of September, and then that just repeats day after day. Get to the 13th, the 14th. Now there is something a little bit wrong here because it does say next scheduled time after 2:33 on the 13th is 2:33 on the 14th. I thought I had the code in there to take care of that. Let me just check. Okay, what I've forgotten here, I'm incrementing next time, but I'm not changing next struct. So I need to convert this next time back into the structure. Okay, so that will then allow me to compare this. Otherwise this was not changing. And what I might do is remove the on tick code. So this will only happen on timer now. Does anyone else find this annoying? I don't mind that there's a reminder to tell me that I need to update MetaTrader. What I do mind is that it takes focus from whatever I'm doing. And if I'm not watching the screen and I'm typing, I'll find that I wind up pressing one of these buttons without knowing about it. And also that just disrupts whatever else I'm doing. I find this really invasive and very annoying. So that's my little rant for this particular video. That's finished, and now I can see 13th jumps straight onto the 16th as it should. So sorry about that one little error there. But that's it. So that's the code that will avoid weekends, or if you prefer, you can allow the code to fire at weekends and then detect that the market is closed, which is probably safer. But this is just a simple way to avoid the weekends if you're trading simple instruments that don't have any unusual days. I hope this has been useful to you. If it has, click the like button, and if you want to see more videos, then click subscribe and click the bell icon to be notified when videos are released. Thank you for watching.